Now we've done the imported. We imported the CAD plan the week before last, didn't we? And traced around that and put the windows in it. We didn't put the roof and the floor on that one, did we?
Yeah.
We did that on the other example, didn't we? Is that right? Yeah, on that other practice that we did. So this one here, did we put a roof and floor on that, or did we put it on the first one?
No, the first one.
We didn't put it on this one. Okay, cool. So who?
The layout of the windows in this one.
Yeah. So everyone got to their. Has everyone got their windows and doors in that one? Or pretty close to it? Yeah. Yeah. Did anyone have any trouble sort of setting it out with the distances, etc.? Or?
The only problem I had was setting the garage door width properly.
Okay, good. Yep.
Isolating each, like, so I just clipped that wall through
and
trimmed the middle of it, but just getting all those measurements to line up.
Yeah, so this length here and this one here.
Yeah, one of them puts a 3050 in.
Yeah.
And it
pushes the other way.
Out.
Yep. So that's a common mistake people make, and often people sort of it's not a mistake people make. It's just a learning thing that people sort of get frustrated because they seem to be moving the same wall backwards and forwards. So that's pretty normal when you're learning. So then that's the sorts of stuff that I sort of we're going to go through tonight. And that's why I said setting your walls and things out. So I've got some permanent dimensions which I'll talk a little bit about today. I think we've touched on them, haven't we? One stage, did we touch on permanent dimensions? Early on, but not much. So when you're setting up a building, rather than just use the temporary dimensions, these blue ones that come up, sometimes it's easier to put some quick permanent dimensions and use those to set your walls and window distances out, which is sort of what I've done here, which is where you had trouble with this end. So and I suppose probably before I get to that, if I actually just delete that bit and trim that one back around the corner, everyone would have had something like that to start with, possibly. And then to make that break in there, like you said, that was really good. So to actually modify that using the split tool. Okay, so split the element. So you've got the choice of sort of splitting with the gap or splitting. What I tend to do if I'm going to delete a section would be to split the wall twice. So randomly just once and twice, doesn't matter what portion I've got, and then that middle becomes a separate little wall, and then I can just hit the delete button. So once you've got that section deleted, the easier way to then sort of get that distance open is to, rather than sort of try to use these temporary dimensions that aren't going to be in the right spot, you've got to start to move the nodes around, etc., is to set up some permanent dimensions there. So when you set up a permanent dimension, it's really in the annotate tab, and you get all this dimension panel here. But the shortcut, one of your shortcuts that I'll introduce certain ones every week, is DI. It will get you straight to a aligned dimension. So DI gets you straight into this aligned dimension tool, ready to do a dimension. That's that one there. And so when you're starting to get ready to do a dimension, we've got some options that we can pick. And usually what comes up first in this option, before you've used it on a drawing before, will be wall center lines will come up first. Okay, mine came up differently because I used it through this drawing, so it's remembered the last commands that I changed it to. So I would change that to wall faces. So the faces of the walls are the outside edges. So when you hover over those outsides, it'll pick those up before the centers. It still allows you to pick the center, but if you were just on center lines, it actually just picks up that center first, and it's very hard to find the ends. You see, I can't find the faces of those walls. It's really wanting to pick up the center. You can press your tab tool, so it's tab key, And when you hover over, you can see that I'm in the center tool, hit tab over the side wall, and it changes the selection. So that's sort of something a bit advanced if you're in that tool, but I would tend to just go wall faces, and then it allows you to pick the faces of the walls and the center. Keep individual references picked for this stage, and I would just pick that face and that face then. So you click both faces of the walls, so it's the end of the walls, not the distance of the wall at this stage, and then you just click to place the dimension. So everyone just practices picking two faces of the wall, it doesn't matter which ones you pick, and then dragging out into your clear space and clicking somewhere there to drop. So what your cursor's doing is sort of tapping the edges of what you want to dimension. So you really got to tap on the edges. So if I want the distance of that wall or the width of that wall, I'd tap those two edges, and I can't click again because it'll pick another dimension. I've got to bring the dimension out, and then I can just click somewhere in this space to place it. Okay, so there's sort of the steps to placing a permanent dimension. So if I had this one picked, which I've got at the moment 1190, and I wanted to then pick this one, I could actually do that in one string of dimensions. So I'll do it again, DI, align dimension, I've changed it to wall faces, and I'm going to pick that face and that face. But I also want to know this face distance here. So before I place the dimension, I continue and pick that face. And I can keep running that right down the length of that wall if I wanted, until I click out here to place that dimension there. Okay, but those two will do at this stage. And if I just had that one dimension and I wanted to continue it, so let me just change that dimension to be this face. So say I was wanting the width, and then I want the width of this room here. I can click on that one, and this tool up here says edit witness line, which means that it's going to continue to draw that dimension. See how it's ready to draw another one? And I can go either side if I had part of the drawing up this way, but I want to continue through this way and pick that face and that face. And you can see it's continued along, and then I place the dimension there. So these two allow me to see what's happening with this garage area. So to get the distance correct here, the first distance for this wall is supposed to be 750? 725 from the outside to the face of that opening. So all I've got to do then is click on that actual piece of wall that I want to adjust, and you'll notice that the permanent dimensions now go blue. So I can go in there and change that to 725, and it will shorten that wall to 725. And you can see now this one's also blue, and this is what the mistake that you made and what people often make, is they see, well, now I can change this distance and I could go in and place that. But because this piece of wall is selected, it would bring that dimension back or across to whatever that is. So you tend to just keep changing the same wall. So what I need to do is actually select the next piece of wall, which I'm going to shorten to make this dimension. So because that one's not blue, it's not going to be changed. And this one now is going to change this end from here, because that's its only reference point. So that dimension was 3 something, was it? 305. Oh? Yep. And you can see it comes across to there. Now, if I wanted to change this wall here to change the distance of where that garage wall is actually set up, you can see if I click this one, I've got the option to pick this one or this one. They're both blue. Okay? But if it was this one was in the right spot, but it was this one that I needed to move, I'd be wanting to click here and change it from that side. So depending on which side you want to move has to be the one you've selected. You see, both of those dimensions are still the same blue. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So it's just about working through. So when I sort of start to explain that in here, that's why I set up these dimensions for all these rooms. So when I drew these really quickly, they were just spaced, you know, let's just move them around a bit. I just drew about approximately some walls that were just sort of random, you know, 4 rooms basically, really quickly. And in order to move the walls, I set up this string of dimensions. So DI, that face to that face, keep it going till you get there, and then you can keep it going to there and there. The other option with this one though, I'll stop that one a bit short, is in the dimension tool, we've got wall faces, but because we've got all these intersecting walls on this outer wall now, I can actually change this pick individual references to entire walls. So what that means is instead of hitting each face, I'm going to actually pick this entire wall to get a dimension. Now with that entire wall set by default, as soon as I click this wall here, all it does is give that wall an overall dimension. But I want to get all of these distances in the room. So the option here allows me to click intersecting walls. And when I say that, I can click and then just click that one and look at that. So any wall that was intersecting there gives me that dimension. So I can place that one there, and instead of click, 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 it's giving me all of those in one. So a really quick way to get that. And then as I go to change my walls, I can check my overall width is right for the building. Is it right? I haven't got my other one open on the other screen. Yep.
16420.
Yep. So once I know that's right, I know, well, I don't want to move any of these outer walls. They're locked in. It's all the ones in between that I need to start moving. So it doesn't matter which end you start at now, but the first wall that you're going to pick is not an outer wall. Otherwise, you're going to shift that overall. It's the internal wall. So I'll start with this one and pick that one. 3370 is the right dimension. So I don't need to change that. But usually, and again, this is what happens at this stage when people start using this tool, they say, well, I need to move this dimension now to the next wall. Because what's that one supposed to be? 2200? 3200. So if I move that one now, if I click that, even though it's allowing me to, what's going to happen? That wall's going to shift that way, and this is going to be wrong. So I need to make sure I click the next wall and then come back and choose that one. So it's only moving that sequence, okay? So that wall was what, 3200? Yep. Move that one along, click on the next wall, and come back to that one and move that one along. What's the next one? 3000. And then that one should be 1710. See that? So really quickly, that's how we sort of can set up some internal walls. Does that help you a bit?
Yeah, I was clicking on the individual number.
Yeah.
It was coming up with all the things.
Oh yeah. So then if you haven't selected a wall and you pick a dimension, you'll get that.
Yeah.
Yep. And that doesn't really allow you to do anything. But what this is if we actually said, well, that there, I want to identify or give it some names. I could say, well, I'm going to put a bit of text in underneath the dimension. So I might say in the below field, I might put that this is bed 1 or something like that. Say apply, and then it gives you text underneath that's associated with that dimension. So that's used quite a bit on like very complex builds that, you know, there's loads of strings of dimension and there's so many that are similar, and it's not really, it's hard to see where the dimension is for inside the building. So if you put something like that in within the dimension, people can say, that's what that dimension's for. It's for that kitchen, or it's for that island, whatever it is, you know. So that's that sort of thing. So you can't override the dimensions. So I couldn't say, actually, I've drawn it a bit funny, but I just want to change that to 3380. If I put 3380 in there and say apply, it'll give me a warning that says, hey, you can't override the dimension. So that's really just text that can go in there. So if you wanted to say something else like check on site, it would say a text rather than, yeah.
Yep. Is that the same with windows and doors as well? You select the window.
Absolutely, yep.
Remove that particular window from
yep.
the door or the other.
So when we were setting these doors up, these sliding doors, we had a certain dimension from the edge of the wall. So I just quickly randomly placed that door in there, put a permanent dimension in to where it was, and then click on the door and move that dimension so that it's the right distance from the edge of the wall. So putting some permanent dimensions doesn't mean they're actually going to be permanent, like we can delete them quite easily at the end. So we wouldn't necessarily use all these dimensions. We might use one or two strings somewhere, but usually you would go back at the end and redo all your dimensions correctly. So they're just a part of a drawing tool. So quite easily to deselect or delete all of those dimensions. What might be a quick way I could get rid of all those dimensions now if I've finished what I want with them?
Highlight them and filter them out?
Yeah, perfect. So highlight the whole model or the whole building in the view there. Use your filter tool. Check none, hit just your dimensions and say apply and OK, and then that's just those selected. The other way we can do it in this sort of instance is to select one dimension, and this is another shortcut, SA selects all. So that selects all of them straight away as well.
Can you, what it's called now, but highlight them and make them just invisible so you can reactivate them later without actually doing the process?
Absolutely. So remember when we looked at this little panel down the bottom with the sunglasses on?
Yeah.
So the little sunglasses tool was hide category or hide element. So hide category, you would only have to select one of them, the dimensions. It would hide all of them because they're part of the same category, they're dimensions. But if you've got all of them selected, you could say hide element and they're all selected anyway. Okay. But a shortcut, a temporary shortcut for that might be to select all your dimensions, and we could just say HH, and HH just temporarily hides them. Okay, and if you do a HH, you'll notice that you get this cyan border around, and then you can actually then apply that to the view if you decide that's what I want to do. So the temporary hide isolate might be that you know that you might be going to just reveal those again quite quickly. So depending on how how often you think you're going to use things, be whether you're going to hide them permanently, because if you hide them permanently using that hide category, for example, that was the hide category. So you can right click as well, you don't have to hit the sunglasses tool. When you've selected something, right click, you can see a hide in view by element or category comes up in the list. But then I do need to reveal hidden elements to be able to get them back. So that was one of those toolbars there as well. So if I've hidden them using my right click, so if I click on an element and right click, hide in view by element or category, to reveal hidden elements, it's the little light bulb icon. So that one shows you anything in pink that you've hidden. And then if you wanted to get those back, you just select one of those and you get this reveal button. So you can say unhide category. And then they're not pink, which means they're actually not hidden. So when you turn that off, they come back. So this all comes back to sort of, I suppose, we're always creating lots of views from this model. So there's certain things that in a model we want to see it in certain views, and some things that might be getting in the way of that view. So remember, we've got elevations all drawn for this model now. We've actually been drawing those elevations because we're drawing a 3D model. So if we go back to the floor plan for a minute, the other thing that we've done a little bit of in your some of the exercises was that you had door and window tags. Does anyone remember those coming on sometimes? Or you might have found when you put these doors in, they had numbers or something associated with them automatically. So what that is if I go to the architecture tab and just grab a door, it's going to just place this sliding door in here, and I can make it whatever door I want, but we'll use the sliding door to start with. If this button here is on, this one, tag on placement, if it's blue up there when you go to place it, it'll automatically put a number tag on. And the next one I put will be 25. Okay, so it just keeps going in sequence. It always starts at 1 and just keeps going. So even if I've deleted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the next one I put in is going to be 6. Okay, it doesn't go back and say, oh, now that 1's disappeared, I'll start there. It just keeps going. So these tags can be associated. This is a door tag, because it came with the door, but windows have also got the ability to be tagged. And what those tags are actually doing is in the door or window that we've placed, so in this case it was a sliding door, can you see the properties? I've selected this door that I've already placed. The properties of this door now, when I've hit my properties, when you look down, you've got a category called identity data, and the mark is number 24. Well, that's the tag that it's picked up. Okay, so if I wanted to say, well, I actually want to call that one number 1, okay, I could actually cover that in there and change it to 1. Okay. Now, if you didn't have your tags turned on when you placed your windows or doors at first, and you wanted to tag it after the fact, which is what I usually do, because these tags are really part of our documentation set, because those numbers can be then associated with a schedule so that we can actually get a whole heap of information. So if you think about these doors being sliding doors or windows, there's a heap of other information that someone needs to know. Who the manufacturer is, how much they cost, what type of glazing, what type of framing is it? Is it aluminium, timber, whatever? If it's a door, is it a painted finish? Is it, whatever it is? So there's lots of extra information we can put by creating a schedule, and all we need to do is have a number so that someone can see door number 1 is this, 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 and this. Otherwise, we're going to have a heap of information on our drawing that we've got to try to fit in next to each window or door. So I tend to not put these in while I'm modelling because they just get in the way for what we're doing, because we don't need them yet. It's already associated a number with them, so we can do it later. So to do it later, if you haven't got doors tagged at the moment, all you've got to do is actually come to your annotate tag. So annotation is sort of anything to do with text, dimensions, all of those sorts of things, any written sort of stuff. And then you'll see a tag panel. And we've got 2 options there, tag by category or tag all. So if we have a look at the tag by category first, when I hit tag by category, what happens here is it says, do we want them horizontal or vertical? Do we want the tags to have a leader, which is like a little long arrow that comes to them. I usually untick that and say no. And if it is a leader, how do we want the ends to be free, attached, and what length away from do we want? So I tend to just untick the leader. And once we then come over to a door that hasn't got a tag and hover over it, you'll see that it wants to place that tag. So as soon as you click on it, it's going to place that tag. So if we say escape twice just to get out of that command, that's one way to do it individually. So if you just had one door that you needed a tag that was missing, you could do that. But the quicker way is to use the tag all category. So up in the tags panel, this tag all gives us a dialog box that's got all of the tags that are already loaded into this template. And the first one there is tag doors. So if I tick tag doors and say apply, it's just tagged all those doors that weren't tagged. Does that make sense? So you don't have to worry whether you've got your tag on or off to start with, but I tend to not show mine to start with. So I've just done an SA, click one, SA, and then I'm just going to hit delete. So I've just deleted all my tags. If I just go tag all and doors again, it's going to pick up exactly the same numbers. It's just re-tagging it. It's not deleting that information out of the doors property. So this one now, because I've changed it to door 1, you can see door 1. I'm going to select that tag and select all, SA shortcut, hit delete. But this door, when I select that door, it's still got 1 in the properties of mark. So that information is still part of that door. It's just that we're not showing it on the floor plan yet. Does that make sense? So we go back to that annotate tab. Have a look at when you hit the tag all. Have a look at all the things that are loaded there that we can actually tag. There's loads of different things, and that's just the ones that are loaded into this template. There's any building element, any family, anything at all that's in there could be tagged. Okay. So what it's doing is sort of taking away the need to do lots of floating text. Put an arrow, type something in, put an arrow, type something in. Because as soon as we drew a normal bit of text in the drawing, it's not really associated with the building. If something's tagged and it changes, the tag will change as well. So if we change that sliding door to a different type of door, that tag would be then telling what that other type of door is, because it's the properties of that type of door. Okay, so it just means that if something changes in a project and we've got tags, we don't have to go back and look for where we've written this, this and this and change all of that information. Any questions about some of those things we've done?
If you change a door to a window,
yes,
vice versa, will it change then the icon tab? Like on here I had oval shaped ones.
Yep, and windows are like a hexagon.
Yeah.
So it does. Yep. You might have to re-tag it though, like do a tag.
Yeah.
And so because if you delete it, the tag will go, and then when you place it in, if you didn't have the tag on, you might have to just re-tag it, but it would put door and window tags, because that's associated with the family, what it does. There's also another type of tag that I use quite a lot. It's a smaller icon there, is one called a multi-category tag. Now the multi-category tag allows you to tag anything else. So if you've got a downpipe in your drawing, instead of writing DP everywhere you see that on your plan and your elevations, you can just associate the downpipe with the letters DP, and then you just have to go along and just touch each one, and it's putting those letters on for you. All right. So we still do use a little bit of text as well, which is this annotate tab text panel next to the tag, and we've got this A is for text. So so the A there just gets you into the text area, and same sort of things apply, I suppose, but it either lets you just do a plain bit of text, one bit of text with an arrow, and one with a bent arrow and one with a curved arrow. So it doesn't really matter what we want to, what type of text, if we want a leader on it, we don't want a leader on it, those sorts of things, which is an arrow. We can always place that in afterwards. So let's just, in this drawing that we've got here, let's just place a bit of text, plain bit of text. But the first thing we need to do is, we've hit the A, gone in, and we've got this A selected. Notice the properties, mine's going to give me an aerial 1mm, which is a bit too small. So architectural drawings have an Australian standard associated with them, and in that standard it says for most of your text on a drawing it should be 2.5mm high. So we can use the 2.5mm aerial that's set up for us. And let's just put a little note here that's going to say open garage, meaning it's an open garage with no door on it. So you just type that in and hit enter. It should just place that text in there. And so what I want you to do now is just escape a couple of times, which takes you out of the text command, and click back on that text that you've written. And you'll notice that this text now, we've got these little blue nodes on the end, so we can actually squash up that box, or if you end up writing text and it comes like that, you might want to drag it out so that it's got room in that text box. It's just a basic text box. But the other thing that it's got here is a move icon, so you can drag it from that move icon around your sheet. And it's also got a little rotate icon, so you can actually rotate it using that little icon on the corner. Okay. So once we know that that works, that's sort of basic control. If we said, actually I want to have a little arrow that points to this opening. Once I've selected that text, you can see that I've got all these leader options now. So that's why I said it doesn't really matter if you don't pick the leader to start with. You can then add one. And so all it's doing is plussing one on the left, plussing one on the right, and they can be straight or curved. Okay, so I'm going to plus one on the right, which will shoot it through there. And I can drag the end point where that blue node is to sort of get it positioned into the place that I want. And then the other thing I can do is I can actually put a little break in the middle, so I can make that like a little elbow if I want. So I can flex that one too and sort of say, well, actually I wanted it to come up and around like that, just for sake instance. And if I decide actually I don't want that arrow, now there's a minus, so that leader can be taken off or put back on. Now the other thing that we can do with text is justify our text. So we can change this section here to be justified to the left at the moment, center, or the right. And I could also, if I had a sort of multi-line text like that, I can change this. What all these ones are for is where the leader comes off. Do I want it to come off the bottom corner? Do I want to come off the top corner? Or do I want to come off the center? So it just moves where the leaders come off. So it depends on what's, you might have sort of quite a ream of text with one leader coming off it. And you might say, oh, I want that in the center. And that's all that is. Okay, so there's a fair bit of stuff there that you can set up based on, you know, what you're doing. But we tend to use that type of text sparingly because it's not associated with anything. So is there any questions about text or dimensions? The more you use them, the more you'll figure them out as well. Let's actually put a floor, just go back and refresh our memories about putting a floor on this building. So we want a floor in this building. We'll put a concrete floor in and we'll put it to the outside edge of all our brickwork. We might actually put two. We might put one for the building and including the garage, and then we might put a separate one in this area and call that sort of an alfresco area. And that alfresco area we might actually set down by 50 mil. So there's a bit of a step down, so then we can put some tiles or whatever on top of that and it'll still have a bit of a step down so that water doesn't come up into our house. So go to the architecture tab, hit the floor button. It's going to be an architectural floor. And we can just use a 200 slab. Have we got a generic 200 already? Everyone got a generic 200? Yep. So just hit the pick line tool, drawing tool, and then just click around the outsides. So now once I've clicked on one each wall, this one's given me too much of a long line. So I've hit the escape, and now I'm going to use the trim extend to corner, and click there and click there. It trims that around the corner, and I want to trim that one so that it wraps around that corner. So I only have to hit that twice and then tick it, and I've got my main slab. And then to get the little alfresco one, we can either go all the way back to floor, etc. But I could just select that existing floor, and this is a really handy shortcut. We've got this tool here that's called Create Similar. The keyboard shortcut is CS, Create Similar. So it's one that I use all the time. So anything that you've already drawn in your model and you don't want to search for it again and go in, it might be a door or a window of a specific size. If you just select it and then hit Create Similar CS, it's ready to start drawing that same object. Okay, and it's called similar because we can still edit the parameters. I could come in now and say, I don't want to do a 200 floor. I'm going to go down and say I just want a generic 150 floor. And this time I'm just going to hit my rectangle tool and I'm going to start at this corner and go down to this corner because it's a nice rectangle shape. And I'm going to come in finish floor level. I'm going to go minus 50 for the height offset in the properties. And tick that one. That should be 0. So now if I look at my model in 3D, my default 3D view, you should be able to see that you've got a little alfresco slab separate set down and the main slab as well. Alright, so we've got that one and that one. So both the same type of sketch. One was the 200 with height offset was 0 to the finished floor level, and one was a generic 150 with a 50 height offset, a minus 50 height offset would set it down 50. All good?
Mine isn't quite working.
What's it saying? Is it's giving you a warning?
Just outlined in pink at the moment.
Yeah. Did you tick it to finish it? Finish the sketch mode, remember? Yep. So always got to go up and hit that tick button with in a sketch. Work now?
Yep.
Yep. So now if we go back to our finish floor level, we can actually put some room tags on these rooms. So rather than sort of come in and write lounge room, laundry, whatever they were, we've got another tool, because we were talking about the tagging button. In the architecture tab this time, can you see a panel called room and area? So in the room and area panel, we've got a room button, shortcuts RM. So if you hit room, as you hover over your model, you'll see that it's actually finding a particular room. You can see that when I hover over in those ones. So all I've got to do is click to place it, and then I can click to place the next one, the next one, and the next one. And I might place one there as well. And what it's doing is sort of every time I place, it's giving it a number, and it's giving it a name. But I don't need the numbers in this building because it's pretty small. So the numbers would be used again for a schedule. Think about this building we're in now as a way to identify what numbers were what. You might actually have the number one scheduled as sort of like all the toilets. So every time you tagged a room, you could see where all the ones are, etc. But we don't need them in this one, so we can actually hit once you place the tag, just hit escape, hit the tag itself, and over in the edit type of that tag, we've got the ability to untick the number. So you could put area or volume as well. We don't need to at this stage. But if you wanted to just have a look at it, if you hit show area, what it actually does, it actually works out your square meters for you of each room. So you can see that's happening there. And all you've got to do then is just click in that bit, and we might change this one to lounge. So you do have to do a bit of typing to actually tell it what the names are. And this one might be laundry. It's like about a laundry size. And this one could be bed 3, bed 2, and bed 1 or something like that. So if we got some of those set up, the next question that usually comes about, what if I want to actually name this the lounge, but I want to put a name in here called dining, and I want to put one here that says kitchen, and I want to put one down here that says hallway. Okay, so we've got one big space that's not got division by any walls, and our tag's just picking up that one big space. So we have this tool in the same panel, the room and area panel, called a room separator. See that one there? So what a room separator is actually just about to sketch a line. So you get the same sort of drawing tools up, and all it's actually going to do is divide wherever I draw this line. It's giving it an imaginary wall. Did you see that dimension change, or that meter square? So if I sort of said, well, I want to divide this up here, and I want to divide the hallway off as well, all of a sudden now when I hit the room, it allows me to go into those other areas. So then I could say, I know the proportions aren't right for this one, but if we wanted to make that a couple of different names, and this one we'll call hall. And this one here now that's going to be hall, that the 11 meters squared is hanging out of it, we probably want to edit the tag. So see how that meter square is really low? If we're going to just use that, we could probably move those meter squares up so it's a bit tighter, or we could just turn them off altogether. Alright, but if we said, yeah, we want the meter square, but we want to make it a little bit tighter, when I select anything that's a family, and some of you might have actually double clicked on some of these things before, which will get you to the same place, you've got this button called Edit Family. So that pops us into the family editor. So you can see it looks a little bit different. It's popped us out of the project and it's just given us how this tag's set up. So this is how this tag looks and how it's set up with a name. When we populate the name, that's our number that we turned off. And here it's given us either a square meter, we could tick that we wanted square meters, or we could tick that we wanted volume. And they're over the same spot. So the first one we click, if I move that down, is the volume, and this one is the square meter area. So to get to, if I move that back there, to get to the square meter, it's underneath the volume. So if you place your cursor over it and hit the tab button once, the tab button cycles through to the layer beyond. And now if I click that, it's only selected the meter square, it's the layer beyond. So we use the tab a lot when we're doing walls and we want to pick the floor below a wall or the door. There might be 10 layers on top and we can tab through and cycle through. And how we know when we've got multiple things cycling through is, remember down the bottom left hand corner, you've got that little prompt that tells you what it's picking. So I'm going to just use my arrows now and nudge that meter square up nice and tight under the name. So we've actually changed the way that this family's going to look. And then I go up to here and I'm going to say load into project and close. So it closes this tab down and loads it back into the main project. And it'll ask me if I want to save it. I don't have to because I'm only going to use it in this project. If I say yes, it'll take me to my computer's files and say, where do you want to save that one? I'm just going to say no. And then it will ask me, do I want to override the one that's already in this project? Yes, I do. That was the point of doing it. So I hit override the existing version and you'll see it come up nice and tight. So that's sort of the basic principle of sort of just editing a very basic window or tag family. Okay, so some of you might have got into that zone by double clicking doors sometimes, and that takes you to this family editor. There's the family of the door, how it's made up. So you can see all the different views. If it's in a 3D view, that's what it's going to look like. That's how that door is made up. In a floor plan view, that's all the workings of how this family was set up, how the flip arrows work, how it stays, how thick it is, etc. So you probably don't want to edit these things much without knowing how to edit families yet. But if you get to that stage, if you accidentally load in your double click on a family, all you need to do is just go load into project and close and just say no, you don't need to change it. And you won't get the override existing unless you've made some changes to that family. Alright, so I just show people that because that's often what happens. You just double click on something, takes you into the family editor, just load it in and close it and say no. So we've got this ability to sort of tag all the rooms, tag doors and windows, tag anything basically, and do a little bit of text as well. Now, one thing that the tag won't work with, so if I create similar, it won't actually work if there's no wall on the front of that garage. So it's not letting me put a tag in there, or the alfresco area. So how do you think I might be able to place a tag in there? Any ideas? If I wanted to put a tag in here or here. So I've clicked 2 tags in there, but it's saying room's not properly enclosed. What's this one missing, and what's this one missing?
Can you use the separator?
Yeah, perfect. So they're basically, this is missing a wall here because it can't define where the end is. It's looking along the floor. It's not hitting 4 walls. So the room separator, by simply just drawing a line across where you want that other wall, it's now identified that it's a 15 square metre alfresco. We could, change that to alfresco. Same with this one. So room separator, as soon as we draw that across there, it's identified it. So the room separators will actually print if you don't hide them. And if you turn your thick lines on, TL, you'll notice that this is how thick all these line weights will print. And they're a really thick, fat line. So one thing you want to do when you're using the room separators is actually hide them in the view. Okay. So once you've got them, you would click on one of those room separators and hide in view by category. So you don't see them on the actual floor plan then. But they are a 3D element, and they will be seen on your 3D view as well. The room separators, yeah. So there is a way to hide things in all of the views rather than just one view, which is quite handy. And that's called the visibility graphics. Visibility graphics. Any idea what the keyboard shortcut might be for visibility graphics? Any wild guesses? VG? Let's try it. Absolutely correct. So remember that one, VG is really handy because things like separation lines, the last thing you want to do, because you're going to use them all the time, okay, because we often have lots of open plan areas in houses, not to mention commercial buildings, but they're all separate rooms. So we're always drawing these room separator lines. And the last thing you want to do is go through every view. You might have 20 views on a small residential house. To going through 20 and selecting all those and finding them, and then you do a print and you'll see you missed one somewhere that you've got hidden. So we get visibility graphics up. This actually gives us the ability to untick certain categories within the model. And so you can see the model category is what's come up in that tab, and annotation categories. Now if we want to just see the architectural stuff, we can filter from the list and just untick the others and just have the architectural stuff. Okay. So any of these categories that we didn't want to see in the whole model, we can turn off. And a model category and an annotation category is usually just the building elements that we've modelled would be model categories. So if you're looking for the floors, the walls, etc., be in that. And the annotation category would be things we've annotated. So our text, our dimensions, those sorts of things. Now, to find the separation lines, room separating lines, we've got to try to find where they might be. So I know from past experience where they are, and they're under lines, which is a little bit weird because they're sort of not real. Well, they probably are lines, but they don't act exactly like any other sort of line. So to find lines in this architectural category, if you just click any one of those and type L for lines, it'll go to the, it's in all in alphabetical order, so it goes to the L's and you'll see lines. And if you expand that plus, you'll see all the line types there. And we want to scroll to so we see room separation lines and untick that. And while we're on this, I suppose, this gives us, in this line type here, you can see it actually gives us the ability to override the patterns, the colours and those sorts of things. This is sort of like the master switchboard for the model. It's like the control centre, so we can actually manipulate things as we go. So by clicking in the override there, it's given me the options to actually click in and change the colours of these lines if I wanted to. Okay, I might change the pattern of it to a straight line. And I might even change the line weight to something a little bit thinner. As at the moment, I think they're set at 6, which is quite fat. But because we're going to hide them, I don't really need to do any of that. I was just showing you where that sort of stuff is, because that's quite handy for other building elements. We might, especially line types, we might say, well, we want to change those to a red or a green or whatever it is. So all we want to do is click on the tick box so that it's not got a tick in it. And then we just say apply and OK. And all of a sudden, in any view that we've got there, we've got no room separator lines, which is what we want. But if I was in my finished floor plan now and I drew another room separator line, I said, actually, I want to separate this room into 2, and I'm going to draw another room separator line there. I get this warning coming up, and it's not a bad warning, it's just something we've got to read and know what it's actually saying. It's just saying none of the elements that you've just drawn are visible in the finished floor level view. You may want to check the parameters or the visibility settings. But I might say, well, I turned them off for a reason. I don't want to see it. I know I've drawn it in the right place. That's fine. Okay. But if I needed to see it, just straight back to VG, find those lines and find where we've turned them off, turn them back on, and I can see where I've just drawn it. Okay. So it's a little bit like, yes, I said, your master control. So you have got the ability to change things globally rather than just by view. Now, if they are hidden by visibility graphics and we want to see what's temporarily hidden using the temporary hide, they do come up in there as well. They're hidden, or permanently hidden rather. But what you'll notice is when you go to select them, you don't get the ability to unhide them as easy. Sometimes you won't even get this button and it won't allow you to because it's overridden by the visibility. Lines work a bit differently, but sometimes walls and things like that, you think, why are they, or it might not be walls, but it might be other model elements that you've hidden. If you can see them in here but you're not getting an unhide category, it's usually because it's overridden in the VG, so it's just a matter of type in VG. Any questions about any of that stuff?
So how did you get the square metre and volume tab up again?
Oh, to edit the family?
Yeah, how do you...
Yeah, so just select one of the tags.
Yeah.
Edit the family, that button there.
No, sorry, I meant how did you change it from room 6, 4, 3, 2, 1 to change that to showing how much area it is? So how to move the...
Yeah, so over in the properties, edit
that's
in the type properties, edit type, you've got those tick boxes. So you can show volume,
yeah.
room, or, yeah. So you don't have to show any, you could just show the name if you want it. Square meters isn't a bad thing to have sometimes, but so should we put a roof on this house? Has everyone put all their windows and doors in? Yeah.
Yep.
Let's put a roof on it. What sort of roof should we do? Any preferences? So what should we do? Let's do something that's maybe a bit more complex. So we're using a few tools. Let's do a roof that's got maybe a 600 eave overhang, but on the end that's got the garage, let's make that a gable end, and let's make that just have a 300 overhang or verge, and let's get the roof a 15-degree pitch. How do we do it? So first thing we'd probably do is go to the finished ceiling level, because that's the level we want to have our roof sitting on that top of that wall. So we're going to go to the roof by footprint button. We're going to keep define slopes ticked in the options bar, so that's going to give it slopes, so the pitch on the angle that it's going to go up. The overhang we said, did we say 600? And let's tick extend to wall core, and we're going to use this pick walls button. Now, can everyone just have a quick look at my screen there? Can you see I've just picked all of those particular walls? So I've just hovered over one of these walls and hit my tab key once, and it's just found a chain of walls. So it's continued right around. So because this building's not a perfect rectangle, it's cut it a bit short, it's gone down. But I reckon what we should do with this to make it even a bit more complex is actually, let's not roof the alfresco little bit, let's go round. So if we could use this button, we could tab and then just click, and it's placed nearly all of our walls, edges of the roof. And if we click it again, the same thing will extend to wall cores, and I want to just select that side of that one and that side of that one as well. So I've added that one and that one to this chain of walls that it's selected. So this is where I suppose it starts to get a bit more complex, because it takes a while to learn what all these lines are, where all these lines are going and what we're going to trim, etc. You don't sort of see all the angles straight away when you're just learning this stuff. And what I'm going to do now is use the trim and extend tool. So I've hit escape to get out of that drawing command. Trim and extend to trim this one to this one and this one to this one. Okay. So that was still quicker than me having to click every edge. Hover tab, did most of it, click two other edges, trim two bits. Okay. Now with that selected, we're going to do a window crossing over the whole lot, and this was going to change in our properties, our slope to the 15 degrees that I said. So it's picked all those lines that all have angles associated with them. And this front one, we wanted to change to have just a 300 overhang. And we also didn't want to have a slope here. This is going to be a gable end on this front. So how do we get rid of this slope here?
0?
No. That's what everyone thinks, so it was the right answer. But if you put a 0 in, you'll get a weird warning, and it sometimes gives you a weird sort of curve on your edges. So it's actually just unticking to find slopes in the options bar up the top. Untick define slopes. And now that hasn't got that slope angle on it, it's not even reading that it was 15 degrees, it's nothing. And tick it, and it's given us that little roof. Just giving us a bit of a weird roof actually. So it's got that gable end, but because it's got this little hip here, it's come through, which is fine. Still giving us that gable. And on this end, if we look in 3D now, we want this wall to attach to the roof. Comes up. And we probably want to attach this one up as well. But I might actually draw another little wall that sits in that section first. So on our finished ceiling level, which is where this roof finishes, or this wall finishes, if we go into our finished ceiling level, which is this little bit of wall here, and hit the wall tool, and the wall we want is the brick veneer 250, and we're going to start it at finished ceiling level, and we're going to make it unconnected, and I'm just going to make it 500 or something like that, and I'm just going to go from that side across to here. Let's have a look at that in 3D. There it is there. I went a bit too far. That's why it gave me that warning. And with this bit selected, I can attach to the top. So there it is there. And I can drag that little node back to that point there. And then I've just got that little opening there. How we go? So new architectural template and say OK. Do a file, save as, project, and this is where we'll save the options down to just 2 backups. And save it somewhere that you know where it is, and we'll call this one class exercise 3 with your initials on the end of it. So what's the next step, do you think?
Elevation marks?
Yeah, perfect. Elevation markers or heights, so we've got something to work with. So if you go to any one of your elevations now, I'll just go to my east, you can see obviously that template's set up the ground floor and level 1. It's given us a 4 metre height. So I tend to just change those two, and one being this ground level 0 could be finish floor level, FFL. So we're just changing the name of that one and keeping it at 0. And the level 1 will change to finish ceiling level. And let's make that one 3 meters this time, something a bit different. Instead of 4, let's make it just 3 meter ceilings. And to get the third level in, so we want a ground line somewhere underneath the finished floor level. I always just pick one of the lines and create similar. So CS to create similar. The other way is to go up to the datum panel in the architecture tab, datum panel, there's a level button there. LL is the shortcut, but I just do a click one CS, which is create similar, and then I'm going to pick lines. Now one thing that I haven't shown you yet is in the options bar, so I was about to sort of put in the offset. Now the offset's going to be, let's make it 200 in this case. Can everyone see that there's a make plan view ticked box there in the options? So if we untick that box when we're going to make this level, so I hover underneath here and you can see that offset coming out. So that's the 200 offset using the pick line, hovering underneath, so I see that little blue reference line coming underneath the level, and click and then escape twice to get out of that move completely. Pick that bottom level, which is now says level 2, and we're going to break that little elbow so that we can drag that down and away from our finished floor level. And this one we're going to click in where it says level 2 and just call it GL for the ground line. Now this named ground line, you might not show a ground line depending on your projects. Your ground line might actually be, you know, sloping, so it's not going to be a straight line anyway. This might be like a paving level or one of many different levels that are underneath the top of the slab. But can you see by what's different about this level marker? See how it's black and the others are blue? Did everyone manage to get a black one? If you click it, it'll look blue. So mine's black because when I created similar and came in, I unticked that make plan view. So by unticking that make plan view, it puts a black head on it. If I've got that ticked and I do a level marker, it comes in blue. Any guesses what the difference between a black head, which was the make plan view, or not? Black head to blue head, what might be the difference there? No guesses? What's happened? Perfect. Yeah, so obviously my ground line, I don't need that to be a view, like a camera view, because I'm never going to just look at the ground. I'm going to look at the finished floor level. So what it does, it doesn't create a view over here in my project browser. See how I haven't got a GL? Because it's not one that I would use anyway. So that's just a way that you can actually start to filter out some of your views. because sometimes your levels are just so that you've got reference in your elevations, or reference so you can get to things, but you don't actually ever look down on those views. So you can make them not plan views if you want. The only way to do it is at that first instance by unticking that option. So it doesn't necessarily matter if you have or not, but it's just a way of simplifying these views that you're actually giving cameras. Anything with a blue head on your drawing, if you double click, goes to the view. So if I've got a blue head, that's why they're blue and black. If I've got this one and I want to go to the finished ceiling view, rather than go over here, I can double click on that head. Okay, so anytime you see a blue head, you can go to it. So same with these section marker. If I double click on that head, it goes to that section view. Back to the finished ceiling level, and go to an elevation through that marker. So it's a way to navigate through your views as well on your actual workspace. So we'll go back to our finished floor level, and we'll start drawing in the walls now. So we're going to go to the wall tool, and the properties of this wall, or the type of wall that we want, is going to be a, let's make it a brick veneer timber. And the base constraints is the base, so the bottom of the wall. We want it to be on the finished floor level, so that's why we're drawing in there. But the top constraint, we might make the finished ceiling level. And once we've got that, we're ready to start drawing. Now, because we're just doing a rectilinear sort of shape building now, I'm going to just use my rectangle tool, and I'm just going to put something in there that's around the center of those elevation markers. Okay, so just use the rectangle tool, change my detail level to medium, and I can actually see the wall hatching. So down in here, detail level, in the view control bar, first one next icon next to the 1:100. Turn my thin lines on, so I'm looking at thin lines, button up there, or TL, and I'm going to put some overall dimensions on this building now. DI, wall faces, entire walls. So DI, wall faces, entire walls, and I'm going to click top wall and one of the side walls, and that gives me those two dimensions overall. So I want 1640 420 for the length, and 9500 for the width. So 16420, and click on the top wall, and I'll change that one to 9500. So I've got my overall external walls done. And now I just need to add some internal rooms in there. So similar to the example there, we can add, you know, those 4 rooms at the bottom. 1, 2, 3, 4, with a hallway coming through. And then we might actually then, even where that al fresco is, we might make that a little room across there as well. So, wall type, back to our wall tool, change it to a timber stud wall. For some reason I've lost my 90 stud wall. Has anyone got 90 stud wall loaded in there? Have you got timber stud 90 in your template?
Yeah.
For some reason mine didn't load in, so I can't even find mine. So I'm just actually changing a wall. I've duplicated my brick veneer 250, duplicated it, renamed it to timber stud 90. So now in the structure of this wall, I'm actually going to delete these layers. So I'm going to delete that one, I'm going to delete that one, and all I'm going to be left with is my timber stud 90. Say OK. That's all that timber stud wall is. So these are sort of any walls that are preloaded. You can't reload walls from other places. They're known as system families. They come as part of the system. And the reason that you don't need to load any others is because you can create any wall from an existing wall, either delete layers or add layers. So now all I'm going to do is run through somewhere with that hallway. I'm going to place that other room somewhere up here where that alfresco was. We'll call that a room, and then we'll have that ridiculously long hallway coming through there, and just divide that into 4 rooms. And then I'm going to dimension this entire wall here to get all these sizes of intersecting walls. So I'm going to do a DI to get the dimensions up. I'm going to change my wall, keep my wall faces, but change my pick to entire walls. And in the options, I'm going to say intersecting walls, and click the top, bottom, and probably that end of that elevation where that garage is. And then it's just a matter of going through and moving those walls to the sizes we want. So we may as well use those 4 sizes that we've got. So we've got 17, 10, 3 metres, 3 metres, 200. 4280 was that end. So start there with 4280. Move to the next wall. 1710, then 3 metres. And then the last 2 by moving the middle one 3200. and the hallway 1150. Well, first we better change the length of that first room so that it's 3510. So 3510. And then change the hallway to 1150. And that should be about right. And the al fresco area, we can change that. Make it start 6500, and then it'll be 3575 there.
Family section, only doors.
So did you go to insert load family, or did you just go door?
I went doors.
Yeah, that's all right. Door, load family, doors, and you should have a overhead rolling or sectional door.
Uh-huh.
Yep. So one's a roller door, one's a sectional.